The stone-paved streets of Harmonia Village reflected a gentle light in the late afternoon sun. Outside an antique shop, wind chimes tinkled in a playful breeze that carried the faint murmur of piano keys drifting from a nearby cottage. Although the notes rose and fell with exquisite poise, they held a certain longing, as though the person playing them were trying to compose a story that remained just out of reach. Inside this small cottage by the brook sat Aaron Estep, a solitary composer with an old soul. His left hand brushing across the black keys softly, his right hand busy scribbling harmonies onto a music sheet. Aaron wore a perpetually thoughtful expression. Each day he sought to create a magnificent piece worthy of his father's legacy. Legend had it that his parents' love story had been sparked by music. In the very same village, Aaron's father had also been a composer, and his mother a talented violinist. Together, they had performed in the old amphitheater in the hills above Harmonial Village. After they passed away several years ago, Aaron had returned to the village of his childhood for solace. Now, he pinned all his hopes on the upcoming festival, intent on unveiling a composition that would not only celebrate his family heritage, but also help him feel less alone. At times, he found himself battling a formidable foe, the blank page. Nothing seemed to resonate perfectly. Melodies fluttered and vanished before he could capture them. At these moments, he would stop, listen to the hush of nature, and try again. Even so, his heart and mind felt painfully disconnected from the completion of a truly harmonious work. One morning, just as the first rays of sunlight dusted the rooftops, Aran crossed the garden outside his cottage. He gathered a few wild daisies to place in a small vase atop his piano. The floral fragrance might inspire a new approach, he thought. But the daisies were frail, their petals drooping slightly, conveying his own sense of fragility. Disheartened, he decided to search for a better arrangement. A rumor had circulated through the village that a new florist had taken over the old Flowering Dreams shop 2 streets away. Perhaps visiting that place would brighten both his house and his hopes. As Aaron approached the florist shop, he noticed the storefront brimming with blossoms of all shapes and hues. Roses, tulips, lilies, and carnations crowded the outdoor shelves in an explosion of color. Pots of lavender hung from wrought iron hooks, and small bouquets were arranged in neat rows on a counter. Peering inside, Aaron could make out a woman moving swiftly among flowers, trimming stems, organizing ribbons, and humming a cheerful tune under her breath. He stood in awe just outside the door. Eventually, she noticed him. She was slender, with sun-kissed skin, her dark hair pinned up beneath a straw hat. Her eyes glimmered like morning dew, and a whimsical smile lit her face. Without hesitation, she strode forward as though greeting a dear friend. "Hello there," she said. "Welcome to the newest version of Flowering Dreams. I'm Oriana." She extended a hand, a hint of floral fragrance emanating from her skin. "I just moved to Harmonia Village a few weeks ago, so everything's still a work in progress. But come in. Welcome." Aaron shook her hand a bit stiffly, unaccustomed to such immediate warmth from a stranger. "I'm Aaron," he finally managed. I was wondering if you had any arrangement ideas, maybe something light and calming." "Of course." Oriana led him inside, deftly weaving between pots of roses and baskets of daisies. "Light and calming, you say? Are you decorating a reading nook, a dining table, or a studio?" "A studio," he replied, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. "Well, it's a piano room, really. I compose music, and I'm looking for fresh inspiration." She wiped her hands on her apron as she studied him. "A composer. I adore music. My parents used to take me to the big concerts in the city. I left to see more of the world, but somehow found myself drawn to flowers. There's a special harmony in them too, you know." Arian's subdued nature wrestled with a flicker of curiosity. He had come just for flowers, but Oriana's presence gave him a sense of brightness he could not ignore. She was the sort of person who seemed to carry sunshine around with her. He watched, intrigued, as she arranged a small bouquet of lavender, baby's breath, and delicate white roses. "This combination is simple and softly fragrant," she said. Shall I tie it with a satin ribbon? Yes, please, Irene murmured. When Oriana handed over the bouquet, he was struck by how easily she had crafted beauty from nearly random elements. Thank you, he managed to say. It's perfect. Remember to change the water daily, Oriana advised, adding a playful wink. He was about to leave, but she called out, if you ever find the music still isn't flowing, you might try a bloom with bolder colors. Sometimes a vibrant hue can help us think differently. The memory of her eyes and smile lingered as he walked home. Placing the bouquet in a vase near the piano, he allowed the gentle fragrance to fill his living space, as though Oriana's spirit now accompanied his thoughts. That evening, he composed a few lines of a melody, the note sounding gentler than usual. Although it was not complete, something had shifted. He discovered a quiet contentment that was new and thrilling. The following day, a flutter of excitement lured him back into the streets of Harmonia. This time, he wandered around the marketplace, letting the steady chatter of villagers and visitors wash over him. A merchant displayed jewelry made of seashells. A baker hawked fresh bread with a honey glaze. The impetus for this stroll was, in part, another chance to pass by Flowering Dreams. It turned out Oriana was in the process of setting up a stall outside her shop. She waved him over. Irene, good to see you again. I was just about to bring some special blossoms to set up outside Rutherford Hall for the festival planning committee. You're familiar with the festival, aren't you? Every year, live music and dancing, plus a competition for the best floral decorations. Well, I plan to perform a new piece at the festival, he said softly, though I fear I haven't peaked creatively yet. My father composed a famous sonata that was played there decades ago. I feel compelled to carry on that tradition. Oriana's eyes lit up. That's wonderful. If you don't mind, would you like to help me carry some bouquets to Rutherford Hall? It'll only take a few minutes. He felt a curious mix of nervousness and eagerness. I'd be happy to, he said, making a conscious effort to smile back. They loaded assorted flowers into baskets, petunias of lavender hue, zinnias in fiery reds, and daisies bright as the sun. As they walked together, Oriana hummed a simple tune that might have been a lullaby. Where did you learn that melody? Aaron asked. This? She paused her humming. I made it up as a child. My mother told me I had an ear for music, but I never learned to read or write it properly. Still, sometimes a melody just lives in you. He found himself marveling at how easy it was for her to create melodies without fear that they might not be perfect. Her approach was so different from his own self-criticism. When they arrived at Rutherford Hall, Oriana set the flowers on a polished wooden table. A festival committee member, Miss Braxton, came forward to inspect them. Fabulous. You're the new florist in town, yes? Wonderful arrangement. Mrs. Braxton gave a curt nod. We're deciding which florist will get to decorate the main stage for the festival. We'll consider your work. After she left, Oriana sighed. I really hope they select me. It's a big opportunity. Leaning closer to Aaron, she asked, what about your piece for the festival? Tell me, how's it coming along? He shrugged, a flicker of discomfort passing over his features. I'm making small progress, I guess. I wrote a new passage last night, but it feels incomplete. Mind if I hear it? The question immediately made him second-guess his ability to share, but one look at her warm, open expression gave him courage. She wasn't here to judge. She seemed genuinely curious. If you want to, he said at last, you can come by my cottage after we're done here. They left Rutherford Hall and parted ways for a brief moment, so Oriana could close her shop. An hour later, she arrived at Aaron's home, carrying a small arrangement of marigolds and daisies. For you, she announced. Something cheerful. Inside the cottage, he led her to the piano. The bouquet she had made the day before was still there, its fragrance mingling with the new flowers. He placed the fresh bunch next to the older one, unintentionally creating a collage of color and scent that hinted at Oriana's blossoming impact on his world. He sat down. placed his fingers on the keys, and started to play. The music felt tentative at first, gently making its way through a cautious introduction. But when he glanced at Oriana, the warmth in her gaze encouraged him. Emboldened, he moved into the main melody, letting it swell and recede with a bittersweet longing. The last chord faded, the air hanging heavy in the quiet that ensued. Oriana clapped softly. "That was lovely," she said. "It took me somewhere, restful, but also pensive, like I was missing something." Palm slightly damp, Iron steeled himself to ask, "Would you mind telling me what you think was missing? I'm trying to shape it into a sonata, something that captures more than just bitterness." She took a moment to reflect, eyes flitting as though searching for the right words. Maybe a playful section, a bright interlude, something that offers a flash of color in the middle of the melancholy. I'm no expert, but you know how in any good bouquet, there's an unexpected flower that catches the eye? In music, that could translate to a lighter, more whimsical theme. Her analogy sparked something in him. "Like a daffodil nestled among violets," he murmured. "I see what you mean." Stepping away from the piano bench, he gestured for her to join. "Could you hum something like you did earlier?" Oriana's cheeks colored a hint. "I don't think you want my untrained voice overshadowing your composition. I'll hum some ideas, but I promise you nothing too fancy." She began humming that same lullaby-like tune she had sung earlier. Aaron listened intently, committing each note to memory. He tried replicating the melody on the piano, adding extra chords and harmonies. Oriana's voice squeaked in surprise at the shifting cadence. Transformed by Arn's touch, her simple childlike tune blossomed into a radiant, uplifting motif. Once the piece ended, they both broke into quiet laughter. Something new had awakened in the music, thanks to this unexpected collaboration. The days that followed found them drawn to each other's company. Aaron would help Oriana transport flower baskets or deliver special orders. In turn, she would visit his cottage late in the afternoon, bringing leftover blooms from the shop, while he shared the evolving stages of his composition. The boundary between two separate passions flowers and music began to blur. He discovered new melodic heights in her spontaneous laughter. She found fresh color choices in the gentle arcs of his melodies. One day, as they adjusted blossoms in tall vases outside Oriana's shop, she turned to him, her expression turning uncharacteristically pensive. "It's incredible. I've never worked so closely with someone before. I always lacked courage to show my vulnerabilities, to ask for a second opinion. But with you, it just feels natural." He didn't hesitate in his response. "Same here," he said softly. "I have trouble letting others hear my drafts. Usually I feel like no one would accept the imperfection, but your perspective has made me see that beauty can be found before something is complete, that the process itself can be joyful." The moment lingered, and for the first time, Aaron felt something stirring beyond his strict discipline. He reached out a hand, and she let her fingers gently slip into his. In that instant, a warmth coursed between them, quiet yet full of promise. As the festival approached, excitement grew across the village. Streets were cleaned and draped with banners of gold and crimson. Posters announced that on the festival's final evening, the amphitheater would come alive with music and dancing. Villagers started to whisper about who would be chosen to do the festival's official floral arrangements. One rainy afternoon, Miss Braxton visited Oriana's shop to sample a few arrangement concepts. Aaron was there, helping Oriana cut ribbons. Miss Braxton carefully examined all the floral designs, tapping her foot in deliberation. After much circling around, she faced Oriana. "Your sense of color is original indeed. Another florist in town has more experience, but your style is refreshing. I've decided. You get the honor of decorating the main stage. Congratulations! Be sure to have your final designs ready a couple of days before the festival." Overjoyed, Oriana let out a little squeal, jumping into Aaron's arms. He held her, smiling, the two of them so elated they didn't see Miss Braxton leave, shaking her head in mild amusement. The next day, both Oriana and Aaron threw themselves wholeheartedly into their projects. She spent hours selecting flowers, ribbons, arches, and decorative accents made of natural materials to create a setting that would wow the festival audience. Aaron, meanwhile, refined the piece he had been working on for the last month. He had begun to call it a sonata, though in truth it might not strictly conform to the classical structure. Nonetheless, the composition captured a tapestry of emotion, gentle yearning, playful interludes, and finally an explosion of triumphant resolution. One evening, with the festival just 3 nights away, Oriana visited Aaron's cottage. Layers of pink clouds streaked the sky, the hush of dusk descending around them. He greeted her at the door, noticing how weary she looked, though excitement still radiated in her eyes. "Long day preparing flowers?" he asked sympathetically. She nodded. "They're all at the amphitheater. I just finished setting up half of the decorations. My feet ache." Her voice softened as she continued, "But I couldn't stay away. I wanted to hear how the piece is coming along." He led her into the cottage. Soft lamplight revealed the music sheets scattered around the piano. "I made some changes," he said, guiding her over to the bench. "Here, have a seat. Close your eyes." She complied, leaning lightly against him. The scent of her floral apron reminded him of 1,000 blossoms in bloom. Slowly, Aaron began playing. The introduction was heartbreakingly tender, each note dripping with the ache of loneliness. Then, as the melody advanced, it brightened, borrowed from Oriana's playful humming, offering flurries of hope in quick arpeggios. In the final movement, he introduced a new chord progression that soared, bridging every yearning with the promise of fulfillment. Oriana, eyes still closed, felt tears gathering. The last chord hung in the air like a whisper of love. She blinked away the tears when she finally spoke. "It's beautiful. It's alive." He met her gaze, a gentle question in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you. Your spirit, your flowers, everything about you. Oriana, I..." He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Leaning closer, he pressed his lips softly against hers. Although he worried it might feel rushed, every part of him knew it was right. She returned the tenderness without reservation, her hands sliding around his shoulders. When they broke apart, neither felt an urge to speak. The moment was complete in its own silence. The festival arrived 2 days later, bringing a swirl of colored scarves, musicians tuning their instruments, and children chasing each other under streamers. The amphitheater had never looked so resplendent. Oriana's floral arches stood tall at the stage entrance, sheathed in vines and bursts of daisies, roses, and lilies. Stands of lilies were arranged in symmetrical arcs on either side of a grand piano placed prominently at center stage. By evening, the village had gathered, filling every seat. Strings of fairy lights twinkled overhead. First came the local dancers, swirling in embroidered costumes to gentle folk tunes. Then a group of street performers coaxed laughter from the children with juggling and acrobatics. Finally, Ms. Braxton stepped onto the stage and in a commanding voice announced, "Good people of Harmonia Village, I'm thrilled to present a new composer showcasing his original sonata. Please welcome Aaron Este." Aaron made his way to the piano, heartbeat thudding in his ears. He noticed Oriana standing in the wings, her hands clasped over her mouth, cheering him on with her eyes. He bowed briefly to the audience and sat at the piano bench, resting trembling hands on the keys. Recollections of his father's stories rushed through him. But what truly gave him courage was Oriana, standing among cascading blooms that she had so lovingly arranged. He inhaled and began. The hush that fell over the amphitheater was absolute. Softly weaving through the introduction, Aaron's music told of solitude, longing, and the slow dawning of hope. The middle section, Oriana's playful motif, sparked a ripple of wonder through the audience, as though they sensed the shift in energy. Finally, the sonata erupted into a triumphant coda that soared into the night air. drowning out every anxiety in a crescendo of joy. When the final chord gently subsided, it left the amphitheater breathless. Then the crowd roared with applause, cheers, and shouts of admiration. Arden stepped away from the piano bench and bowed, his eyes searching for Oriana's. She rushed onto the stage, face beaming, arms reaching. Without hesitation, he pulled her into a spontaneous embrace, and the crowd applauded louder, celebrating the union of two hearts as much as the artistry of the performance. In the midst of that thunderous ovation, Aaron was surprised to see Ms. Braxton motion him back to the microphone. Aaron, she said, that was remarkable. It's not every day we witness such a heartfelt composition, but we do have an additional surprise tonight. She waved at someone backstage. Out came the famed violinist Joshua Bellerose, who had mentored Aaron's father decades ago. Joshua walked forward, smiling broadly. Areen, I knew your father. He'd be so proud. That composition is a triumph. I especially love the middle section. So unexpectedly delightful. Is there any chance I could persuade you to let me join you for a brief encore? Even just a segment from the final movement? Eyes wide with disbelief, Areen glanced at Oriana. She nodded, shining with excitement. I'd be honored, Areen managed, voice raw with emotion. He moved back to the piano bench, while Joshua lifted his violin and tested a couple of notes. At a cue from Aaron, the two men launched into the final movement once more. The violin soared above the piano, weaving sweet phrases over the chord progressions. The lively interplay electrified the amphitheater, culminating in a glorious, flourishing finish. When the last note died away, the standing ovation seemed to shake the very foundation of the stage. Though Aaron tried to maintain composure, tears stung his eyes. When he turned to Oriana, who had quietly watched from a corner of the stage, he saw her face, equally overwhelmed by the moment. Ms. Braxton reclaimed the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this festival is all about. Creativity, passion, and collaboration. Tonight, we applaud Aaron for his sonata, and we also recognize Oriana for her stunning floral arrangements, which brought a fresh vibrancy to our beloved amphitheater. Oriana joined Aaron at the center of the stage. The night sky glittered with stars as the audience's applause and cheers enveloped them. He took her hand and squeezed gently, feeling a deeper joy than he had ever known. After the crowd had dispersed, the two of them wandered through the near-empty amphitheater, the fairy lights still glowing softly. Oriana reached out to straighten a lily that had toppled over. Ariana watched her delicate fingers adjust the stem, touched by her unspoken devotion to detail. Finally, he spoke in a gentle tone. Oriana, thank you for coming into my life. Thank you for showing me that music isn't just about darkness and longing, that there can be playfulness and romance, that two people can make each other shine. She tilted her head to meet his gaze. You've invited me to see the world in melodies and chords. That's a gift. I used to think flowers were my only way of expressing color and emotion, but now I see that life is a shared creation, two souls adding their hues to the canvas. He rested his forehead against hers. Would you consider staying in Harmonia Village? Not just for your shop, but, he swallowed, suddenly struck by the depth of what he was asking, but for us too. I'd be here anyway, she replied, pressing her lips to his softly. Since I found you, I don't want to be anywhere else. The village had grown quiet by the time they left the amphitheater. Street lamps cast gentle pools of light across the pavement. Arm in arm, they walked past shuttered shops and turned onto the familiar lane leading to Aaron's cottage. The air was cool and faint notes of music from other musicians drifted in the distance, a final echo of the festival's energy. Stars shimmered overhead, hinting at infinite possibilities. Neither felt the urge to rush the moment. It was enough to be together, the newly blossoming bond alive in every step. When they reached Aaron's front steps for a final good night, Oriana paused, glancing at him through eyes that held no trace of hesitation. You know, she said in a half-dry tone, my shop will open late tomorrow. If you'd like a partner to celebrate your success with a leisurely breakfast, I volunteer. He laughs softly, warm contentment flooding his spirit. I'd love nothing more. Then, as the night sky crescendoed in its silent brilliance, he kissed her tenderly, feeling a stillness within him that was entirely new and infinitely comforting. Music and flowers would greet them both at dawn, brimming with fresh ideas. Yet for now, it was enough to drift in that moment. Two souls discovering the beauty of creation that only together they could unearth.